So good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday night Ahamkar meditation program. And with all my heart, with all my love, I welcome you to our program tonight. Now, this is such a unique and special event to me, anyway, that we get to keep the company of the infinite, the company of the divine. That's you. That's all that is. But we get to do it consciously. We get to enter into that space so that we can shift our mind from all the things that it's been engaged in and doing the Dharma of the mind. But our consciousness gets contracted to fit the shape of the mind rather than expanding to its infinitude. So this is a time when we get to just let go of the mind, set it aside. It's a good little mind. So we treat it compassionately. We're nice to the mind. And we get to then come home to the truth of who we are and celebrate that together, get absorbed in that together. And really that's what all the practices that we do are aimed at that. So we'll be starting with the opening mantras as a way of both helping to take care of the mind, invite it to quiet and be set aside, and then sit for a few moments in the stillness after we do the chants, because that's the fruit of mantra. That quiet, that stillness, that open spaciousness of being. In time, we can perceive that no matter how busy or active the mind is, or quiet, whatever its state, because that presence is continuous. It's always here. Right? So, but it takes initially letting go of our attention being so absorbed in mind in order to reclaim our awareness of that pure fullness of being and all the sublime qualities that go with that. So we'll start with the opening mantras. Shrim Mata Kalim Devi Ki Jai Gajananambo Tanganari Sevitam Kapita Jumbo Palacharu Vakshanam Umatsutam Shokam Vinashakarakam Namami Vigneshwara Parapankajam Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamandaya Purnamevavashishate Om Shanti 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 Shri Mata Kali Mahadevi Ki Jai. So once again, with all my heart, with all my love, I welcome you to our program tonight. Thank you for joining us and bringing the power of your practices, the power of your commitment to practice, and the highest, the power of your presence. Your presence is the divine presence. And the more we know that, the more we're drenched in that direct knowing, the more that can come through fully into our lives and into the moment. And really that's what all the practices are aimed at. So thank you for bringing the fullness of yourself to this evening. And so tonight, it's the first Thursday of the month, and so usually that's a time when we're talking about Dharma. But as somebody's pointed out to me, that's about all I talk about, because really, what else is there to talk about? Especially when it comes to the mind, all right? Because the mind is what engages in Dharmic activity. It's the mind that gets going with that. That's what it's given to do. And the mind is an instrument for doing. So it likes to know what to do right, etc., right? So living dharmically, understanding the depths of Dharma, helps to support the mind in fulfilling its purpose. What's its purpose in this life? Well, the highest purpose is to know the infinite as our own self and as all beings, all creation. So when we give the mind that, it's its Dharma, then it needs some help. Like, what is it going to do for that? So that's where we come to then understanding and looking at practices. Right? So many practices, so many different things can be done, so many different asanas in Hatha Yoga, so many different breathing techniques for pranayama, so many different focusing techniques, so many different mantras. So we have to simplify it for the mind as well. So it's not just running around through this forest of practices and getting lost in that, right? So we want to simplify it as well and see what informs those practices. So this is from Kali's Bazaar, and it's the greatest practice is compassion. The greatest discipline is patience. The greatest path is love. Resolve to faithfully and enthusiastically follow these, and you will know yourself to be free. So we want the mind to get that underneath whatever it's doing, how is it coming to this place of what is it to practice compassion? Compassion is not, especially in the Buddhist tradition, compassion isn't just a sentiment. Oh, you feel compassionate for somebody. Compassion is active. Compassion is a practice. Compassion is both the wishing and desiring for all beings to be free of suffering, as well as committing our moment-by-moment endeavors to helping others become free of suffering. So compassion as a practice is really aimed at freeing other beings from suffering. And that can be in any number of different ways, whether it's at work or at home. It can be, it can be saving a bug on the wall and putting it outside rather than smacking it. That's not just ahimsa, which is nonviolence, but nonviolence is compassion, right? It's acting in a way that is bringing that kind of compassion into the moment. It's also how we approach ourselves with that kind of compassion. What are we doing to be mindful of how do we uplift ourselves? How do we keep ourselves attuned to, focused on, engaged with the highest truth in the moment? So that can be giving the mind a place to rest, even while it's in action. That can be giving the mind the mantra as a throb of the infinite, this pulsation of the divine, so easily acceptable. So that's another way of bringing the mind and keeping it informed that, this active compassion has these beautiful facets to it as we contemplate that and engage that. And when we think of discipline, discipline is often invokes the sense of, I restrain myself, I hold something back. And in a sense, that's part of what's engaged with as patience, as a discipline, right? Because it's helping us to get free of reactivity, impulsivity in the moment, right? So the practice of patience, the practice of just letting things be present, letting things unfold, watching with an eye of patience, of wisdom. These are all tied up together. So these are ways that help inform the mind that these practices have these beautiful qualities to them that we can also, inform our daily life with. A yogi is one who wakes up in the morning, and that's a practice in itself. How do we wake up? Where's that compassion for ourselves, for the world, for our life? Where's the patience we're going to enter the day with and take on whatever we need to take on? Right? So these are our ways of helping to orient our consciousness, orient the mind, so that it can move through the day more attuned with, well, what is in full possession of boundless compassion? Your highest nature, your highest self, right? Boundless compassion, boundless patience, boundless wisdom, boundless love. So the mind, taking these as ways of practice, is helping to attune itself to the fullness of presence of the pure being that you already are. Your highest nature doesn't need to practice these things, right? That is its nature. Boundless compassion, boundless love, boundless wisdom, boundless joy, boundless patience. It has that in infinitude, right? So the mind, getting attuned to that, has to then say, oh, how can I align myself with that in the moment? That's how this practice then informs the mind moment by moment, right? Because all the practices are for the mind. Whether we think of it as Buddha nature, divine nature, Christ consciousness, Holy Spirit as our essential nature, that's already fully expanded. Its infinite being is already there. It's the mind that does practices to both become aligned so that it can become a conduit, a servant of that, as well so it can participate in what it feels like to have those qualities run through it. Because when the mind is caught up in its separate identity and lacking things and frustrations and everything, then it's caught up in the emotions that go with that, the limitations that go with that, the reactivity that goes with that, the automaticity of the reactivity, right? So we're really helping the mind get reoriented towards, wait a minute, your highest nature is this. How can you come to sit in that? Move into the world and bring that into the world. So all the practices in that way are that we think of as practices, whether it's mantra or pranayama or a sitting posture. They're all aimed at supporting the mind becoming more and more refined and attuned to these qualities that are the qualities of your own highest nature, the irreducible qualities of your infinite self, God, right? That's then what helps the mind become an instrument, a servant of that. That's the highest Dharma of the mind. So, when soot blackens the chimney of a lamp, who would waste time yelling at the flame for not shining brightly enough? Patiently clean the impurities from the glass of your mind. The brilliance and beauty of your true nature will illumine all around you with the light of love. So clearing the impediments from the mind. What are the impediments? Well, it's false identification, meaning we become identified with a limited sense of being, a limited sense of self. We become identified with the mind and its content, this thought, this feeling, this perception, this like, this avoidance, this, all that stuff that we think of as, who am I? What am I in the moment? That's the stuff that the mind has become identified with? Consciousness, the flame, that light, never got identified with that. The light of being, that pure light, that pure illumination of love, is not identified with the mind. So that's why it's also can be experienced as the pure witness, the consciousness that is so fully expanded and aware and holds the mind. But even as the mind considers that, it considers that from the point of view of mind. For mind being held, well, that's a concept. And it's a concept that's absent of some things and maybe present with others. To be known, when the mind thinks, oh, you're fully known by the divine. Right? Well, the mind, when it fully knows something, it looks at that as a process of thinking and grasping, understanding. The divine illumines everything with love. And that love is inseparable from pure knowing, the full embrace of knowing all that is as itself. No separation, nothing left out. Not the little hidden parts that the mind goes, oh, please don't look at that. Oh, I don't even want to think about what I did back then. The cringeworthy things, divine embraces those as well. So for the infinitude of being, for the truth of your highest nature, knowing and loving are one thing. Right? So fully knowing is fully seeing it as our own self in love. In love. It's a very interesting expression we use. In love. We've gone into this space, into this state of love that illumines, embraces everything, nothing left out. So the poor mind, it is tasked with the practices that are really about quieting it. Because it's really with identification comes agitation. Right? Identification is a movement of mind. That's why when Buddha was talking about being wakeful and what that is, in the psychology of yoga that existed back then as well, the faculty of mind that becomes everything is called Ahamkar. Ahamkar means the little I maker. It makes a little sense of me, a little sense of I, out of all the things that arise in perception. Except the things it disowns, and then it's the not I. But they're just two sides of the same coin. So Ahamkar is constantly going, me, not me, not me, mine, I, not me, not me, not me. That's the mind, and all that is movement of mind. Before the mind, as Ahamkar does something, there's an instant of just clear perception, just pure wakefulness of awareness. That, as part of the instrument of mind, is called the buddhi. Buddhi, just perceiving, just awake. Now the mind's wakefulness is limited. The mind is a limited instrument of awareness, of consciousness. And what it's aware of is limited, but that wakefulness, that pure awareness, when not just present in mind, that pure awareness is boundless awareness. That pure awareness is fully awake, completely awake, nothing left out. That pure awareness is what Buddha talked about as being suffused with the four immeasurables, the boundless love, the boundless compassion, the boundless rapture, the unshakable equanimity. Again, the mind divides those into four things. And They're not at all separate. The mind says, well, I'll practice a little wakefulness. I'll practice a little boundless compassion. I'll practice some, wisdom. I'll practice some joy. Because the mind as an instrument goes from one little thing to another little thing serially. That's also the nature of mind. Right? The nature of awareness is much more like the nature of space that holds and interpenetrates everything. Right? So we now know, of course, from Einstein, that everything is basically either just a tiniest throb of energy, but where does that energy exist? In space. Space. There's no such thing as something solid. Right? The space suffuses, interpenetrates, holds the entire universe, all the galaxies, all the stars, all the planets, all life, all not life. Right? Space. That's why it's such a magnificent way of the mind trying to gather what it is to be in that spaciousness of being, the infinitude of being. Now the mind is just trying to imagine that. That awareness is self-luminous, meaning it's self-knowing. It knows the infinitude of its own self. Right? The mind can't know that. It's a little instrument. It can't know the infinite. It's a frustration for the mind. It would like to have a concept, an idea, something to grasp it. And they all fall apart. They're all going to fall apart. No matter how expansive the philosophy, the religion, that doesn't matter compared to the infinite, like dust. It's hard for the mind to come to terms with, because that knowing is the knowing that's inherent to being, pure being. That's why, to begin with, we most directly experience it in stillness and silence, unoccluded by clouds of thought and movements of mind. That's where we come to rest in that stillness. And that's what then Buddha was talking about, in deep prajna paramita, coursing through this profound stillness of awareness and seeing that everything about the mind, everything the mind perceives, empty, ephemeral, but suffused, that awareness itself, suffused always with these four immeasurables that are really unspeakable. Words can't approach them. Words can't describe them. Our attempts to do that are always so pathetic compared to the richness and the fullness of entering that space. That's what we're here for. To know that. And walk it into the world for the benefit of all beings. All beings. And it's the loving quality of that that is also so alluring to the mind that it wants to know that. It wants to know that truth. It gets just a whiff of the fragrance of that truth. It goes, please, take me there. That's what the practices invite us to, again and again and again. So, if you take what the Buddha and Christ said, and all the great yogis, saints, sages, mystics, and lovers of God, can be reduced to two words: choose love. There's nothing higher than love, nothing purer, nothing more selfless, nothing more powerful, present in every moment. So choose love. In all times, in all places, choose love, for love has already chosen you. You are already in the divine embrace. You are already in an ocean of love. This is one of the great mysteries. How we can be in this ocean of love, and yet so thirst for it. So thirst for it. That's the great pain that comes from separation. That separation that comes from not knowing. Not because it's not present, because we don't know it. So the practice is about knowing, undoing all the thought patterns that say, no, I really am just this little thing. I really am just separate. I really am just a little piece of flotsam floating in the ocean. We have to let go of all of that. That's what the practices are, both disciplining and training the mind so we can stay with that, to overcome the conditioning of countless lives of identifying with limitations. So it's no easy task. So it takes so much repetition. Truth is quite simple. Soham. I am that. And then immediately the mind will go, no, I'm not, I'm really this. That's why it takes so much repetition. So much coming back. Over and over. Letting go, coming back, letting go, coming back, letting go of the mind identified here, coming back to mantra breath. So letting go of the mind wandered off there, come back, come back, come back. Letting go, coming back, letting go, coming back. That's what it is, over and over. And in doing so, the mind is also deepening its patience, its compassion for other beings suffering. So the practices, even as we're doing them, are transforming the vehicle of mind and body, are developing the virtues that can serve our highest nature and bring that into the world. So when we start to hold that awareness, that kind of the attitude, the bhav behind the practices has to do with this compassion, this profound compassion, this profound patience, and this all-embracing love. That we want our practice to reflect that. So when we sit to meditate, what's our attitude of approach to sitting? What's our attitude of approach to the mind? Choose love in all times, in all places. Choose love. Let that love then infuse and inform our actions moment by moment. That's what all the practices aim at. That's what all the different spiritual traditions in the end bring us to. It's what all the mystics in the end say, what is the nature of the divine? Love. Pure love. All embracing. All forgiving. All loving. That's who you are. So let the flames of love cleanse you of all clinging to illusion. Let love illumine the truth. Love is the most precious gift. Love is the most sublime path. Love is the most profound meditation. Love is the highest attainment. In love, the fullness of compassion. In love, timeless patience. In love, unbounded awareness. In love, all is illuminated. In love, vast spaciousness. In love, form and emptiness embrace. In love, I and thou disappear. In love. In love. Unshakable equanimity arises out of love. The steadiness of love. Love isn't agitated. Love is all-embracing. I'm not talking about the sentiments of, oh, I like this or I like that. I like it intensely and thinking that's love. That's not what we're talking about as the pure essence of who you are, of who God is, of what your highest nature is. It's that loving embrace that sees all as it is and sees it as itself. Turns away from nothing and no one. To know that. To know that. You've taken birth. It is your birthright. When we practice, we want to practice with that awareness. I remember my guru saying, all practices without love are nothing but hard labor. We bring love. We invoke love in our practices. Yeah, that can become a ritual. It can be doing puja and doing arati or waving of lights, lighting a candle, having beautiful images that help to invoke that in ourselves, or whatever one's called to your heart and your soul. They're all to then serve, oh, bring up the love, bring up the love. And so mantra, when we're chanting mantra, we have it with the awareness that mantra is a throb of love. Mantra is a throb of the infinite sent into this domain to be apprehended, to be engaged, to envelop mind, body, heart, soul, to know the divine embrace. These are concrete forms. So we have the sound form of the divine. But because it comes from beyond the mind, it can take us back. It can dissolve its form and become more and more subtle. So it becomes just the throb of awareness, awareness suffused with love. Dissolves further, becomes simply light. A light that illumines all with love. So we're going to chant now. We're going to chant the great mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. I bow to the divine within. I bow to the auspicious one, fully present within and as everybody, everything. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Take refuge in that. Let it take your consciousness back to its source. Leave behind the little mind. It's a wonderful little mind. It'll still be there when we come back. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. A throb of the infinite, a throb of yourself, a throb of love. So we'll chant for a few minutes and then sit in the stillness. And as you chant, it's with the awareness of I am that. I am the mantra. I'm the source of the mantra. I'm all of that. And when we sit in the stillness, the mind moves. Okay, just invite it to move in the field of mantra. Invite it to move. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Srimati Kali Devi Ki Jai. Shiva So we end with this prayer. May all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. So, coming back to love, coming back to patience, coming back to compassion, endeavoring to free all beings from suffering in whatever ways we're given in our everyday life. But if we're doing that consciously, we're seeing our life as being dedicated to relieving the suffering of others, that we bring then a mindfulness to being skillful at that through the day, to be focused and enthusiastic with that loving presence. You know, when we act out of love, when we do things that we love, we bring such great attention to it, loving attention, caring attention. So that's what infuses mindfulness and elevates it beyond just the mind. It brings mindfulness into attunement with that highest awareness, the awareness that's already present in its fullness, in its loving, compassionate greatness, right there, right now, right here. So we keep coming back to that. And then we end, just like we end this program always, with the dedication that all that we do, may it serve helping to free all beings from suffering. So that even our endeavors, even our practices are selfless in that way. So I want to thank you again for coming this evening and bringing the fullness of your loving, compassionate presence, the fullness of your practices, of being ones who practice and then walk the fruit of your practice into the world to help nurture the world and free it from suffering. So thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks.